Good evening to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to our discussion video for today, May 23rd, 2024. We're going over today the record-breaking hurricane season forecast that was dropped by NOAA. Let's waste no time in getting into it. The Climate Prediction Center talked about it today, as well as many various sources. NOAA released their hurricane season prediction today, and it is record for their first prediction that they would release in May. They went with 17 to 25 named storms, 8 to 13 hurricanes, and 4 to 7 major hurricanes. It is record because they never go into the mid-20s when it comes to their range. The highest they've gone when it comes to hurricane season forecasting was back in 2010, which is also coincidentally a year that we're really looking at in terms of comparison, at least in terms of the sea surface temperature anomalies in the Atlantic. That was the last time they ever went anywhere close to what they're predicting, and they only went 23 named storms. This year breaks the record once again for the most amount of activity that NOAA is expecting from May only. And the fact that this is just another prediction, let's just really quickly look, showing this table once again. We compare NOAA's prediction to what everybody else is saying, and it falls basically right in line. They have a range up into the mid-20s. Everybody across the board expecting at least 20 or so named storms this year. It's among the consensus that everybody has, even going back to the UK Met Office, which released just yesterday as well. They're all agreeing. We're all seeing convergence in all the predictions. We're seeing them all agree, basically not only on a super active hurricane season, so much above normal, but they're also going right around the same ballpark too. And that just goes to show the general agreement that everybody has on this year being such an above normal year. And NOAA goes into more in depth about why they believe this year will be very active. They have it with their NOAA hurricane season prediction that's on the NOAA website, and they even have more graphics here to kind of better represent what they have for the Atlantic. 17 to 25 storms, 8 to 13 hurricanes, and 4 to 7 major hurricanes with an 85% chance that we'll see above normal activity. They're very confident that things will be above normal in the Atlantic. And we could just take a look at that in the sea surface temperature anomalies once again. We could just see how warm it is in the MDR, widespread anomalies exceeding as much as 2 degrees Celsius in departure from normal, above the long-term normal. And that's not only seen across the MDR, but in the Caribbean too, and even in the Gulf as well. And we combine that with La Nina developing in the Pacific. El Nino is completely out of here now. We've been in a neutral state for about at least a month or so now. And now La Nina is making its entrance, and these two factors are going to combine and potentially set up for a really busy hurricane season. Just to put into perspective how warm the Eastern Atlantic is right now, still as much as a full 1.3 degrees Celsius above the long-term average in the Eastern Atlantic alone, and in the MDR as a whole, it is also just as warm as that as well. A little bit of a drop-off, I guess, between a day probably has to do with the trade winds and Saharan air, which once again we talked about before. That is a very typical sort of thing that we see. But bottom line, the Atlantic remains very warm, and we look at that since the graph has started, which is from March. We've basically been in the same exact place in terms of warmth in the Atlantic. We've been as warm. In fact, in some cases, we're warmer than we were, especially throughout portions of the MDR, than we were at the beginning of the year. And now we're in late May, and hurricane season is knocking on our door, and we still have this warmth out there in the MDR. It is really setting up for everything to kind of come to agreement that this year will be a really, really active hurricane season. And we could even take a look at it in comparison, not only to this year and how it is right now, but we could even take a look at it in comparison to years in the past, and we've been doing that. In fact, I think I even did it in my update from yesterday. We look back at years like 2010, 2020, and 05 and how warm they were in the Atlantic. Well, I'm not the only one that's doing that either. This is a tweet from Leon Simmons, and he says, "Remember Hurricane Katrina? That was 2005." And then he says 2024 will be a year to remember, because look at what he shows in terms of MDR sea surface temperature anomalies. This is from the OISST data. This is from May 14th to 20th in 2005. And 2005, by the way, and even 2010 as well, were record warm in terms of how much warmth they had in the Atlantic for their time. They were record warm in terms of energy in the MDR. And if this was record warm at the time in 2005, then compare that to what we have for 2024 this year. Look at how the stark and how incredible the difference is. So many areas where we are not only very warm, but even record warm in terms of the magnitude of these anomalies in the Atlantic, and especially when we're comparing this year to a year like 2005 that, like Leon Simmons said, produced Hurricane Katrina. It certainly raises questions this year, especially given, once again, we're in May, and especially on the heels of a prediction like NOAA, when they're predicting a really active hurricane season, as much as 17 to 25 named storms, which is once again the most they've ever predicted in May for a hurricane season. Really quickly though, that besides the fact that NOAA is predicting a really active hurricane season, let's just really quickly kind of get an idea of what's happening in the Atlantic right now. Not much going on though, except there is an area of interest, and we did actually talk about this from time to time over the past several days, that something would happen in terms of an area of non-tropical sort of origin would kind of develop in the Caribbean, move northward, bring a lot of rain to the Caribbean islands, including Puerto Rico and Hispaniola, and then move north into the subtropics and maybe acquire some characteristics, but not really fully develop. And that's what the NHC has, a 10% chance over the next 7 days. And they think that this is an area of disorganized cloudiness and showers. And they say that environmental conditions are not conducive, but they could see some slight tropical or subtropical development out of this. But once again, emphasis on slight, because there really doesn't seem to be that much confidence that this will become much of anything. And meanwhile, in the Eastern Pacific over the next week, nothing as expected. Visible satellite, we could see it. We could see that system that the NHC marked, and you could see why it's only a 10% chance. Very broad in terms of its overall scope of energy. Lots of shear associated with this system too, so it's not going to concentrate over one area. But what it will do, and it is doing right now, is bringing lots of heavy rain to Hispaniola, Dominican Republic, and Haiti, and also some of that rain will affect Puerto Rico as well, and it's probably affecting portions of the Bahamas and Cuba too, and they're probably getting heavy rain and gusty winds from this. Often like what we would see in in tropical systems, especially in the early season, that are disorganized and weak. The biggest impacts we see is flooding rains and gusty winds. That's probably what they're getting from this. But the only difference is that this won't develop as it moves northward, or it likely won't. But besides that, there's also tropical waves too. There was a tropical wave, and we talked about this yesterday, analyzed the first wave of the season, roughly around the central MDR, and I think it's right around here. And you could actually see a little bit of swirl action going on, a little bit of turning with this wave in the Atlantic. And that's why we kind of call these tropical waves, because not only do they have pockets of energy, but they also have pockets of vorticity as well that come off of Africa. And there are seedlings for development to occur, not just in the MDR, but for the Atlantic as well as a whole. There are seedlings for development to occur, and sometimes especially help feed the development of these big monster hurricanes that we get in the Atlantic. And we've just analyzed our first one yesterday, and it's once again roughly located right around here in the central western MDR, though you can obviously see it probably won't develop. Lots of shear still across the entire Atlantic, and also dry air coming off too, Saharan air coming off the continent of Africa, as typical in the early season, of course. And maybe another wave, I guess, about to emerge off of Africa as well. And this will probably get analyzed by the National Hurricane Center tomorrow. But bottom line, the thing is that as much as we're all predicting an above normal season, it also seems like the Atlantic is slowly beginning to show signs of life as things come together. Besides the fact that there are signals as well for potentially the first several weeks of June in the Atlantic, especially in the Western Atlantic, where there could be development. We'll go more into depth on that tomorrow, though. But really wanted to focus on NOAA's big hurricane forecasts today. Very active indeed, and it's just a continuation, honestly, of just the overall agreement that we've gotten since the beginning of the year that this season looks like it's going to be very active. And now we're seeing confirmation from that with all of these big forecasting agencies coming out with these big hurricane season predictions. It continues the streak. It continues the idea that we all had in the first place. And now it's just about to see. Now it's just all up to seeing whether or not it'll actually play out the way that these forecasters think. All of that, though, will be only decided, though, over the next several weeks as we head into and through hurricane season. And we're all going to find out very soon. Hurricane season is once again on our doorstep. At this point now, we're really just only a week away from the hurricane season, slightly over a week away, but you get the point where the hurricane season, especially in the Atlantic, is knocking on our doorstep. And very soon we'll see just how active and whether or not these record-breaking hurricane forecasts will pan out. With that being said, though, I'm going to end it off here for tonight. Sorry for the late upload, but I still felt like I should have talked about this today, so I'm getting it out to you now. Hope you enjoy. Stay safe. Peace, love, and kindness to all. And definitely expect an update tomorrow. See ya.